A reminder that you can find Unfound on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, the X, and Unfound's website, theunfoundpodcast.com. Zachary Carey was a 38-year-old from Evansville, Indiana. He came from a huge family and had been a welder. On May 30th, 2023, outside Lynnville, Indiana, Zach was with a longtime pal of his riding around in that person's vehicle. This person says Zach got out and walked off into the woods. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Dunsel, and this is Unfound. Over the past almost 8 years, although the topic doesn't come up every episode, we've spent a lot of time examining the acquaintances of the missing people. Yes, they may have not been responsible for the disappearances, but sometimes these people who knew the missing person the best act in ways that are hard to understand. I think we first made this a topic of concentrated conversation with the disappearance of James Walker, who allegedly walked away from a Food Lion while his closest compadres were inside. Then with the disappearance of Leanne Hosberg, we were perplexed when all of these girls who went to school with Leanne did not want to have anything to do with the investigation, with one still insisting to this day that she didn't know Leanne. But all is not lost. With the disappearance of Bowman, the people who cared for him the most went to great lengths, even illegal ones, to find out what happened to him. Well, with Zac Carey, he was just riding around with a buddy. Then Zach walked off. How could that happen with these best friends? Now for a summary of the case. This disappearance is not on my friend Megan Linus' website, charlieproject.org, and it is not on NamUs either. Zac Carey came from a big family, and maybe he had the advantage of being one of the oldest. His family admits Zach wasn't much of a people person, but that doesn't mean he wasn't kind to everyone. Zach loved nature, and it was not unusual for him to live off the land for a few days at a time, then out of nowhere appear at his family's home, only to go off again. Zach had been a welder, but then got fired when the supervisor he liked moved to Florida. He had been married twice as well. The overriding issue, though, as an adult for Zach was his mental health. He struggled mightily, and 2023 might have been the worst year yet. So, on May 30th of 2023, Zach was with his longtime friend Chris. In fact, for a while, Zach had been living in a building on Chris's property. Chris's story later was that Zach insisted the two go for a ride, with Zach choosing the roads. At some point, Zach took Chris's phone and shut off the GPS function so no one would know where they were. Eventually, on the outskirts of Lynnville, Indiana, Zach had Chris pull to the side of the road. Zach got out, leaving behind his ID and other items, but taking his phone. Once again, according to Chris, as he drove away, he watched Zach walk off into the woods. He was never seen again. Searches later revealed Zach's phone and cigarettes in the brush not far off the road from where Zach got out. Here we have another disappearance where mental health is a topic. But added in this time is how a friend of the missing person reacted to a crisis in the moment. Contemplate what you would do if you noticed your best friend having some kind of mental health breakdown, while you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, if Zach's plan was to walk off, why would he take his phone? Why not just leave it in the truck? Number 2, Zach's sisters really didn't try to break into Chris's house. Did they? And number 3, are you confident enough of Zach's survivalist experience that he could still be alive in the wilderness somewhere? Zach's family, at the very least, cannot understand Chris's behavior when he saw Zach walk off. The guests for this episode are 2 of Zach's sisters, Cecilia and Rachel. Unfound news. The newest Unfound Now episode is out. I analyze the recent disappearances of Nadia Cole, Aaron Ong, and his daughter Soraya. Rumor has it they went to Mexico. I'm not so sure. Next, sign up at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast to partake in the newest Found episode, where I detail from disappearance to discovery the saga of cop killer Donald Eugene Webb, a guy who set the record for being on the FBI top 10 list the longest. Finally, for my American listeners, I hope you all had a wonderful, all fingers and toes still attached, July 4th. And for my England listeners, please don't take the day personally. In the end, it all worked out for everyone. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the sisters of Zac Carey, Cecilia and Rachel. Rachel and Cecilia, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's start here. I'll start with Cecilia. Talk a little bit about your family. Of course, you're here with your sister today. Of course, your brother Zach is the one who is missing. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about any other siblings you may have, maybe a little bit about the Carey family, and then Rachel, I'm going to give you an opportunity to do so as well. But Cecilia, you can go first.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. The Carey family is really big. We're a very blended family. A lot of half siblings and step siblings, but we're all family nonetheless.
Uh-huh.
The actual Carey kids, there's 7 of us.
Wow.
That all have like the same dad, or the same mom and dad, whatever.
Okay.
And I think since we are such a big family, there's a lot of age gaps between us. So
yeah,
I would love to say that we all are very close and get along, but I mean, like I said, there's age gaps, and we're a big family. So.
Yeah. Okay. And Cecilia, are you Zach's older or younger sister?
I'm his youngest sister.
Youngest sister. Okay, very good. Same question for you, Rachel. You know, your little insight, and where do you fall in line of all these 7 kids, Rachel?
All right. Well, my mom had Jackie and Zach, then me, but there was a sister Kelly that would come in and out of her life, and that was Zach's dad's daughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and
Zachary
is 2 months older than me. So technically, when she was around, I would have been the 4th youngest, and if she wasn't around, I was the 3rd youngest.
Huh, that's
so
interesting.
We were like, yeah, it was very interesting, especially around birthday time.
Yeah, they call themselves the twins because they're like 2 months apart.
Yeah, my stepdad would always say, "Where are my trouble twins?" Because here we were. Then I have a younger brother that shares the same age as me as well, but for 1 month and 1 day after. So me and him and Kelly were all like real close.
Okay.
Then there's Stephanie and Cecilia.
Okay.
We're the youngest.
They're the babies.
Okay,
so
I gotcha. So I know you both then are quite a bit younger than I am, but it kind of maybe reminds me a little bit of the Brady Bunch. Kind of blended everybody getting together, and maybe brothers and sisters who kind of have the same ages, but you know they have like their step brothers, step sisters kind of situation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right, and let's move on to this. All right, so this Carey family, big family. And did you all grow up in Lynnville? I'll go to you first, Rachel. Did you all grow up in Lynnville, Indiana, or was this somewhere else? Where did you all grow up?
No. So from my start of my life, I was in Evansville.
Okay.
And then I know Zach lived in Elberfeld.
Okay.
But he lived in Elberfeld when he was a young child.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even remember that far back.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember a time he wasn't home, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my oldest sister, she also lived in Evansville. We moved to Posey County. That's like Mount Vernon area in '96. My grandpa passed away. My mom moved out there. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but Zach, he lived with cousins in the Elberfeld, Lynnville area when he was a kid.
When he was a kid. And we spent every summer up there in Elberfeld because we have a lot of family up there. Yeah, a family lake.
Okay. Cecilia, then, I'm guessing maybe you all kind of went to different schools then, elementary schools, junior high schools, a little bit moving around a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, we all went to different schools. Most of us did, at least.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to talk about Zach specifically. So that gives everybody, I always want to make sure everybody, the audience, realizes this, of course, are real people, these are not just mysteries or not just cases. These are real people. And so we not only try to get to know the missing person well, but, of course, all the family members. And, of course, I don't think it's, of course, not the situation here, but, of course, sometimes family members are the suspects in some of these disappearances. But, of course, I don't believe that happened with Zach. But so that gives a little bit background of what we might call the large Carey family. Let's move on to this. Let's just now talk about Zach, and I'll go with you, Cecilia, first. So he was your older brother by how many years?
15?
Wow, 15 years.
He was 15 when I was born.
Wow, okay, that's a big difference. I have two brothers and a sister that are... we have a big separation like that as well. Okay, just some of the things when you think about Zach now. Of course, his disappearance is very, very new, just over a year old. But when you think about Zach, some things about his personality, his interests, what can you say? And then I'll move to Rachel, but you first, Cecilia.
Zach, his personality, he was very, he was kind of reserved. I wouldn't say he was shy, because he would definitely speak his mind, but he was just not really a people person, preferred to, keep close circles, be, by himself. But, of course, people who really knew him, he loved to crack jokes and pick on his sisters. And he loved anything outside. As far back as I can remember, he's always had me outside with him, like fishing or... even gardening or climbing trees, loves being outside. Loves camping, just anything that's not around people. Nature was definitely his getaway.
And being that there was 15 years difference, obviously, he would have been well into his 20s, maybe before you maybe even began to understand about, siblings and things. Would you say he, kind of watched out for you, or did you even though 15 years difference, did you talk a lot, or what?
Yes, we did. My mom always says that I was really Zach's baby, because ever since I was born, Zach, he was the one who took care of me as a baby. My mom was still working as a CNA when I was born, so she said that Zach, pretty much took care of me while I was at work, and he always referred to me as his baby and not hers. And so I'd say we were very close, and because of the age difference, and the fact that our dad wasn't around, I think that he also kind of took it upon himself to play more of the father figure to me. He still very much was my brother, but he definitely saw himself, and I saw him. He's always been a father figure, in a way.
What about you, Rachel? Of course, you were closer in age to Zach. What can you say about your, one-on-one relationship with him? What are some of the things that come to mind about him when you think of him now?
Zach and me are best friends.
Wow.
Zach, if you don't see Zach or you didn't see me as a kid, there was a problem. There was a problem.
Okay.
And if Zach didn't show up around the corner and I didn't follow, that means I was up for something, and Zach probably put me in it. That's the truth. When I came home from prison in September, the year Zach went missing, he was the first person I saw whenever I drove into our town.
Wow.
He was my first phone call before I pulled out of the prison gates.
Huh.
And he called my mother-in-law and was like, is she there yet? And he was my first phone call. So I came straight in. I met up with him, and he already had me steel-toed boots and a job. So we started working together, and it was like I never missed any time.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was the person who spoke to him last on a phone call.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, sure.
So me and Zach definitely were close.
Okay. And we're going to get into this a little deeper, but like Cecilia said, I have it in my notes, Rachel, Zach really liked the outdoors, even to the point maybe of going out camping and things. Did you get into that with him as well, or not?
We always had this is little kids growing up.
Yeah.
We were going to go pack our bags, run to the creek, build a home, and just live off the land. So we spent most of our daytime, from the time we woke up to the time we went to bed, being country kids in the middle of nowhere with our shovels and our fishing poles and the creek. We built the elaborate caves and clubhouses out of junk because my grandpa was a junker. And he had buses and buildings all full of stuff. And we would scammage through them, come back and build these awesome clubhouses until scrap season when Mom took it away.
That sounds fantastic.
So it was great. We also had other friends. There's two cousins of ours that were really cousins. They're my mom's best friend type cousins. And I remember summers going out to the semi-trucking companies where they would work on them and playing on all them steel poles and just getting lost for hours out there.
That's fantastic. That's a great story, Rachel. I can kind of relate to that. I grew up in the hills of Pennsylvania, and I can certainly relate to going out into the woods and the creeks and, building dams out of, twigs and things to try to back up the creek and stuff like that. Yeah.
It was just our way of escaping.
Yeah, I know the feeling. All right, that's a fantastic story. Let's move on to this. What about relationships? Go back to you, Cecilia. Any women in his life? Of course, in his teens, into his 20s, or anything you can say along those lines?
Well, like I said, as a kid, I don't really remember too much women. I think Zach kept his love life from me when I was a kid for sure, but I do know he was married to Karen for a while. They got married when I was pretty young. I'd say probably like 8, 9, and they got married, and they were married for a little bit. And then they got divorced, and he remarried Laura. That was more closer to my teenage years.
Yeah.
So he was married twice.
Wow. Okay.
But he's had a couple girlfriends here and there, but yeah, that's his love life. At least for me, he never told me much, but.
All right, Rachel. Well, since you were closer in age, anything that you can expound upon that, Rachel, regarding Zach and women?
Zach was a poet. Zach wrote poems in his spare times, and he was a love-hard person.
Romantic.
Very romantic.
Okay.
He would go out and find a rock, and he would chisel that thing into a heart, and before you know it, he had given you the most passionate little story behind it. And I'm like, how did you come up with that? Like, where are men like you for your sister? And he'd be like, dime a dozen, it's because of you girls, or he'd be like, it's because you girls are the reason I'm this way. And I don't know, that's how my brother was with women.
Why didn't, in your opinion, Rachel, why didn't those two marriages work out?
Well, him and Karen are friends. Yeah, him and Karen are still to this day friends.
Okay.
He goes and they actually have a son together. His name's Dixon. It's a dog.
Oh my.
Karen was a friend of mine, and they met, and they did work out. And I'm not going to say they didn't work out because their friendship is still strong. So I think that they just went in their separate ways. and knew what was best.
Okay. What about his other marriage?
Also, and the reason that was such a problem was because, unfortunately, we do suffer from addiction problems in this family.
Okay.
And they both did. And instead of pulling each other down, they were stronger apart.
Okay.
And
gotcha.
Yeah, he's been battling their addiction.
He I would say he was a hoe because he stayed with the same consistent women. I know he had another relationship with a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
We call her Fluff, but her name is Crystal, and he and then her were like, he wouldn't just be with a girl, he was long-term with a girl.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he have multiple girlfriends or wives,
And then, like, if he left you, it wasn't because it was bad terms. It was because you had came to some kind of reconcile. And his second wife passed away, actually.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that.
They had split up already, but she had passed away, and I think it's like 4 months after he went missing.
Oh.
So we found that out in Walmart one night, me and Cecilia together.
Okay.
And I don't even know if he knows, so.
Okay.
And I'm not sure why him and Laura didn't work out. I'm
not sure why they didn't work out.
When they broke up, so I wasn't, or got divorced.
Okay.
Let's move. Definitely not.
Okay.
In that relationship.
Let's move on to this. I understand that he was into welding. I'll start with Rachel this time. He was into welding. How long we'll, of course, get into how he lost that job, too, a little later. But how did he get into welding as a job?
Zach decided he wanted to change his life around. Mm-hmm. He had always been, like I said, a builder, a tinker with things. So it was a passion. He put himself through school. Mm-hmm. Went to college. He went to college at 36 years old. I was so proud of him.
Yeah, he was the first college graduate of all the siblings.
Yeah, of all the siblings. I remember we were sick because we lived together. Zach and me have lived together off and on our whole entire life. Mm-hmm. And I always have a house with a bedroom for him because I know he's coming.
Yeah.
But he called one night. I remember talking to my dad about it, and the next thing you know, I'm locked up, and I'm hearing my brother's going to graduate, and he's in Tennessee because I keep calling asking why he hasn't talked to me on the phone. And they told me he was in college. And wow. I remember thinking in my head he would be 36 when he graduates, but I'll be the proudest sister.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And he wore his jacket the day he went missing. He was wearing that jacket.
It was Lincoln Tech, I think.
Yes, in Tennessee, and he wore that proudly.
Wow, that's a great story.
And like I said, he got me that job when I got out. We worked together.
Yeah.
Cutting metal side by side.
I think Cecilia told me that in a previous conversation. I think I had that in my notes. I think that might have come up. All right, so that's how he got into welding, and he graduated school. The first one in your family to do that.
Yes.
Wow, that's spectacular. Let's move on to this. I'm going to go to you, Cecilia, on this topic. Mental health struggles. Of course, we know you were very much younger than Zach, but I still want you to give your opinion on that. Did you ever have to deal with that one-on-one firsthand, or what can you say about it?
I can say that Zach fought his battles in silence. He did not like to talk about his emotions. He is very much, yes, he was a romantic sort of guy, but when it came to himself, he was like a manly man. He was very much, men don't cry and men don't do this.
Yeah.
And, I'm his little sister, so I know me especially, he never really talked to me about those issues because he's always seen me as more of his daughter. I've always been his baby girl and not his sister. And so I think that because of that, there were things that he never wanted to tell me about because he never wanted me to have to worry or be worried about him.
Yeah.
I know he talked to Rachel. He was comfortable telling her more of his emotions than he was toward me. Just because he kept things like that from me, and in a sense to protect me, as you would say.
And you're and Cecilia, your understanding, this is something that started as a teenager or in his 20s?
Yeah, he was very young when he started feeling depressed and having battling mental health issues.
All right, Rachel, being that you were closer in age, what can you say about, he lived with you for a while. Do you remember the first time maybe you thought something's going on with Zach as far as mental health You know,
Yeah.
What do you remember about that?
I would say a lot of the siblings suffer from emotional mental health.
Okay.
I do know that my sister Jackie wasn't a very depressed person. She was a very energetic, bubbly, all over the place people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And
Jackie's the oldest sister.
Jackie's the oldest. Jackie's also my sister who passed away.
Okay. So,
then we have Stephanie. And Stephanie held strong, but she does suffer from depression.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have a depression. Mental illness, definitely. But I would say we struggled as kids, basically, growing up. I remember Zach going outside specifically one time, and he's like, I hate being the only man. I hate knowing you bleed and knowing she bleeds, and by golly, this one's about to start.
Oh my God.
And I know it's embarrassing, but it's true. And I looked at him and I said, what's a good thing we're boys?
Huh.
He said, Rachel, you're a girl too, and you'll grow into one. And I remember later on in life, there'd be times he would lock me out of the garage. And the garage was our hangout. Mm-hmm. And I was like knocking on the door, and I was like, why can't I come in no more? He's like, you're a girl. You finally are you're too much of a girl for me. And I never was a girly girl. And I would come out there and I'd be like, Zach, what's wrong? And he wouldn't talk through words. He would talk through song. And we would sit there and we would do something, come up with something, create something, or just work out. And before you know it, we were listening to music and he would express himself through those words. Mm-hmm. And then whenever it was over, he'd be like, did you understand it? Did it talk to you? I'm like, yeah, Zach, I got it. He's like, so then what do we do? And, like, he would do the same thing to me whenever I was upset. It was just like, I had to scream it out, and Zach had to, like, come on, sis, let's go fight. Let's just go box it out in the backyard, run some laps. You know, like, he was definitely there to channel my emotion and his emotion off of. I do know that when Zach lost his job, prior to that, he was on a down page. We would go to work, and even a good friend of mine, Dee, and his friend, he said, what's wrong with you, bud? You're doing that thing again. And Zach said, I just don't know where I'm going or coming anymore. Mm-hmm. And I know that he started calling more, and we'd be on the phone more. And we had talked about putting him into Cross Point.
It's a Cross Point in Evansville. It's like like a center, like a rehabilitation center.
Yeah.
Okay. Like people go there.
You go there to get medications or just to get help with your depression.
It's a behavioral health center.
You know.
Okay.
And he had called me, and we had talked this out on the phone. And I had met him 3 days in a row that week. And I wasn't going to his house. I would drive all the way out to my mom's where he had. And he had put himself out in the yard, and he wasn't coming in and out of the yard until Rachel showed up. So we spent hours in the rain that last night out there. And I came home, and I talked to Cece, because we had lived together, me and C did. And Zach agreed. Well, when we were getting ready to go out the door to do this, we got a phone call from my sister that my father had fell ill and was going to the hospital. So I told Zach we would swing by and get him and take him up with us. And while we did him, we could check on Dad. I think it was too many people knowing his problems at the time. He shut down, said no, and hung up.
Okay. Let me ask you specifically. I know neither of you, I don't think, are medical professionals necessarily, but when he would be in these spells, was it just depression? Did he have any paranoia, any schizophrenia, anything like that either of you two ever saw?
Yes, he's got schizophrenia, and I both have schizophrenia.
Okay.
And yes, Zach would get into these illusions of past memories. Because when my brother was 16, he was riding his bike from the old catacombs haunted house to my house on Franklin, where I was staying with my twin member. So she had been living with her mother at the time, so I was spending the night there. So Zach was riding his bike on his after the catacombs. He got hit by a car. It ripped off his ear. His head was like 3 times. I'll never forget going into the hospital room and seeing him with so many marks up his face and stitch working, and his head looking like that old pumpkin movie. And he just laid there, and I remember thinking the worst.
Yeah.
And before you know it, he said, "Don't start crying. This nurse's going to give me a bath soon." I said, "Oh, my God." And, you know, he lightened that moment real quick for me.
Right, I can tell.
Yeah.
All right.
I was like, so it was really...
Yeah, that's funny.
He lost memories from it. He had frontal lobe damage.
Okay.
And it caused him to not remember things correctly or gaps in memory. Okay. Well, as he got older, he told me this when I came home from prison. He said, "I'm starting to remember things. I just don't think I'm remembering them right." And we talked a lot about that after I came home. It was like, I don't know what happened, but I do know for a while before I went to prison, we were on a bad world spiral down. So I don't know how much down he went whenever I went away, but I do know how he was when I came back. And it was like a different Zach. It was a different Zach. Okay. He was more sadder.
More depressed.
More depressed. And if he used, he would get in these realms, basically, I'm going to call them, of paranoia state. Everybody was going to get him, and anything was after. He laid underneath a workbench at work one time, and our friend Dee, and this happened right before he got fired, and Dee had to talk to him and let him know everything was okay. He was also, like, in a state with our boss, but...
Him and the boss weren't getting along.
Him and the boss definitely were not getting along, and no matter, like, come on, man, you can't say that, we can't do this here, or... You know, Zach was definitely, I'm the boss. He ain't the boss. I've been here longer.
All right, so I think we got a firm handle on that. So he's struggled with some mental problems for a long time. Could have been exacerbated, like you said, by this wreck that he had as a teenager. Cecilia, you had told me in a prior conversation that also he liked to spend time outdoors, and in fact, he would stay outdoors maybe for days at a time. What do you remember about that?
Yes, that is true. He absolutely loved being outside. That was his safe space, where he went to think. And he's always been, as long as I can remember, he's always loved camping, and he's been known to disappear into the woods for a couple days just to camp and survive off the land, and so that's very totally normal for him.
When he would do this and go do this, would he take anything with him, or what do you remember about that?
Sometimes. I remember as a kid when we'd go camping, down by the creek or whatever, we'd pitch a tent, and he would have, like, the basics, like a pot to boil water with, like, a fire that he made, like, hunting knives, fishing pole, like the basic stuff. And when he would go by himself, I think it was also, he always took, like, the bare necessities, because he really liked that he knew how to survive off the land, and I think that's what he liked the most out of it, was being able to provide for himself, having very little.
Okay. Rachel, as far as you know, what was the longest that Zach ever spent out in the woods by himself? How many days? Any idea?
Zach, for one, had stuff with him, because when he would show up just on a normal day, you could be like, "Man, my charger ain't working." This boy will pull out a pocket full of chargers and have every one of every kind. He definitely had, like, battery packs, resource packs, knives. He had random things in his pockets that you don't even know why he's carrying it.
Yeah, but it was like
It's
resources.
Like, it's resources. It's like, I'd be like, Zach, why do you have zip ties? He's like, hey, you never know when you got to zip something up, or my moped fender, or there would be a reason why he had it, and he was prepared.
Okay.
But the longest I ever known Zach to go out as a kid all the time for days and days. But as he got older, he would go out, spend about 3-4 days, come in, get a shower, let me know, hey, I'm hiding from the world. I'm not here. And then go back out another 3-4 days, come over, get a shower, eat.
Like a week.
And then if he's not with me, he went over to another sister's. And if he's not with that sister, then he's really hiding in the back of Mom's acres or the creek bed that we grew up in. And he'll come see her and be like, hey, I just was in the neighborhood. And really, he's living on the creek bed for 2-3 weeks, coming back and forth, seeing us all. You know, and that would be his way of visiting, but his way of getting away from society, too.
Okay.
So, and I'd even ask him, have you been home in a while? And he'd be like, water's nice, Rachel. I've been finding crystals up on this. And he'd tell me about this adventure he took and how he found a new place to find crystals, or a new place where arrowheads are at, or...
Yeah.
He's exploring. He was exploring.
Okay.
So...
Let's move on to this. I'll start with you, Rachel, on this. In general, just who, we'll get into him later and specifically, but who is Chris? How long did Zach know Chris? Did you know Chris very well? What can you say about Chris?
Chris was our brother. Like a brother. Chris is, when we moved to Mount Vernon in 96, my mom started us off in one school and quickly moved us to another. Zach and Chris became buddies the first day. Zach and Chris grew up side by side. No one picked on Chris, and Zach knew. And you knew Zach was right there. And then if somebody said something about Zach, you knew Chris was right there. And they were going to go get their older brother, Anthony. So it was an immediate friendship.
And how long would you say they were friends at the time of Zach's disappearance? 20 years?
I want to say Zach would have met him, I think, 12 or 13.
So a pretty long
when
time.
They met.
All right, long time.
A long time. Like I said, Chris, I mean, we lived at Chris's too. Like, we would go camp at his mom's house for a week. Me, Zach, Chris, their sister Carolyn, their brother Anthony, and then walk the railroad tracks from Mount Vernon, Posey County, and come to my mom's when we got bored with her. So.
Okay. Cecilia, I'll go to you on this. Did you ever have any interactions with Chris? Did you get to know him very well? What can you say about him, once again, just in general?
I would say so. Because him and Zach became friends when they were so young. I mean, I don't remember a time when Chris wasn't around, because I was, Chris was already there by the time I was born. So I grew up knowing, that's my best friend's brother. I grew up seeing Chris like my own brother, and, when I'd run into him in public, he'd be like, oh, there's my baby sister. So very much he was like an older brother to me, and I remember him growing up, remember him and Zach always being around, being country boys, fishing, whatever. And usually if one of them was getting in trouble, the other one was also getting in trouble.
Or keeping the other one hidden.
Yeah, or if one of them got caught, the other one was covering their back, but...
Okay. All right, so before all of this happened, both of you had a positive opinion of Chris?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to this. And being that you worked with him, Rachel, I'll ask you, why did Zach lose his job, and when did that happen?
Christmas break. We went on Christmas break into New Year's. I lost my job the first day back. I had COVID during the Christmas part. And then we went on break immediately into it. So I went back to work one day. After the break, I went to work, and the boss came up to me, and he was like, I think I'm going to let you go, but I don't want to let you go because I don't want to lose Zach.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it's fine. Zach's still a big boy. And I went and told Zach, I was like, he's not going to accept the fact that I had COVID back-to-back. It was 2 times. And he said, he was going to regret that mistake. And Zach continued to work for about 2 weeks. And then I got a phone call from Zach, and he's like, I hope you're up. I'm on my way. And he got there, and I was like, Zach, what happened? He goes, Jackie being Jackie. And I said, what did Jackie do? And Jackie would get on these things where he thought he knew more than the welders or more than the cutters, and and Zach I guess he had been there so long, he thought he had more entitlement than the boss,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because wasn't it a new boss?
Yeah, it was a new boss.
Yeah, you told me, the guy that you told me that the guy that Zach liked had left, and then some other guy took his place and
the new boss,
didn't get along with that guy.
Yeah, and the old boss, it's a funny name. His name was Carey too. Rick Carey, I think.
Interesting.
And it was a joke. Hey, that's my son. Zach was his son. And he had moved down and opened another company in Florida, I think it was. But he also was the big inspiration on Zach's welding career. He had talked to Zach about it, and I guess between Dee and Rick, they had planted this in Zach that he needed to go down there and get a career and come back and make good money there. And so I know that when Rick left, it was he lost a friend and he lost a good boss. Yeah. So he felt entitled to that job, and Jackie didn't see it that way. And they always just bumped heads. That's why he lost his job.
So how long was this before Zach went missing?
Like, how long did they switch bosses?
No, how long after Zach lost his job, how long was it before Zach went missing?
January to May.
Yeah, he lost his job in January. And look at something.
Like 4 or 5 months then?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. His depression picked up right at February. Mm-hmm. And we did that long talk in my mom's...
I think from January to May, it was just kind of like a downward spiral.
Yeah, it was a quick spiral.
Okay. What is, Cecilia, going to you? You told me that something happened and he lost his moped. What is that story, Cecilia?
He has his moped, but he called my Nana for insurance money because he got plates on it.
And that story. Okay, I'm sorry. I was trying to remember what story.
Yeah, the story that he was. We'll just some of this will get edited out. Yeah, the story is that he was riding his moped around and lost it or got pulled over or something. I understand this is happened not long before he went missing, and also was something that really affected him.
Okay, so I bought a moped. Zach had a moped. We went riding one day, and Zach's like, it's okay, you're with me, I'm Superman, my plate's been bad for 3 years. And I was like, what? So eventually, it was during the part he lost his job, he did get pulled over. And they told him he had to get insurance on it and valid plates. And Zach threw a big fit. Well, Grandma was going to pay for him to do it. And he didn't understand why you had to have plates and insurance on a moped. He thought it was the stupidest thing that the government could have really come up with just to take more money from people.
Okay,
and it was just a big old meltdown, but it really wasn't even affecting him. It was just what he could channel his energy into, so you didn't know what was really
kind of like the cherry on top.
It was like the cherry on top, yeah, because he just didn't want to give the government no more money.
Okay.
I mean, oh my gosh, that's all it was. Chris, to my knowledge, Chris has that moped. I don't know if Chris still does or does not.
Okay.
But, yeah, basically that was the story. He got pulled over, his plates weren't good, and he was really upset about having to pay his fine or whatever. Yeah. And because he couldn't drive it no more because they knew his plates were bad. Yeah. So that was also a thing he couldn't get to and from.
Okay, so we got. And when did this happen? How soon?
I really can't.
Maybe like a month before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't very long before he went missing. Like maybe a month.
Okay. And one more thing, once again, my understanding of what was going on with him, you all lost a sister the year before, and Zach was greatly affected by this as well, Cecilia?
No.
It was our niece.
Your niece.
Our niece passed away the year
your
before.
niece. Yes, Cecilia, your niece. Why don't you talk about that, Cecilia, what you remember?
She's been passed away a year now, but she passed away in February. So he lost his job in January.
Mm-hmm.
Our niece passed away of a drug overdose in February.
Wow.
And my brother deals with addiction. And we do have a sister who passed away in 2007, also from a drug overdose.
Oh.
So I think that our niece's death and it being the same thing really affected him.
Dad was in the hospital.
Our dad was in the hospital around that time. And so I think, losing his job and our niece passing away, and he was already struggling with like these old feelings and emotions coming back, and it brought back, Zachary was in prison when our sister passed away, so he never got to like attend her funeral or really say goodbye to her in any way, and that like always weighed on him so much. And so I think our niece's death, it just brought all that back up,
A lot of bad stuff
stuff.
going on with him in early 2023. We have this death. We have losing the job. We have the losing of the moped. A lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to this for both of you. How often were either of you seeing him during the course of those first 4 or 5 months of 2023? How often?
Regularly.
Yeah, I'd say regularly. I'd come home from work and he would just be hanging out outside waiting for me to get off, or same thing with Rachel.
When I came home from prison, like I said,
Yeah.
it was September 23rd, me and Zach spent a total every day, if you add them all up, maybe a month and a half away from each other. Or 2 months maybe max of days. And not consistent days. If we weren't on the phone, we definitely were making plans to see each other.
Okay.
He knew that our home was his home, so he showed up whenever he felt like it.
Yeah, no. I would go, it wasn't odd for him to say, okay, well, I'm gaming. I'm like, okay, or he'll call and be like, what are you watching tonight? And I'm like, I haven't found one yet. We would run through a list of movies and then end up watching a movie.
Yeah, he was always recommending movies to us to watch.
And then he would come get those updates. He wanted the updates. He'd give you a list of movies. He'd disappear. He'd come back like, you watched them yet? Okay, now you're really watching them. He'd take his dirty boots off.
Oh, yes. It was a thing at our house. You had to take your shoes off when he came in, and he would come in with his dirty boots. And
the boots would come off, and his little toes would run across the floor, and he'd have his snacks, and
we'd watch movies.
Okay.
The day that I last spoke to Zach, it was a 2-hour and 17-minute
Wow.
phone call. And he got on the phone, and he said, well, you still got that mattress under the bed? I said, yeah. And he's like, I'm on my way. I said, Zach, I'm on my way to a retreat. I was going to a sober living retreat for the week. And I was like, but you know what? I'll stay here. And he's like, no, you go have fun, send me smoke signals. And I said, Zach, I can't go knowing that you need me right now. And he said, you got that hot dog eating contest, right? Because I won a hot dog eating contest, and I wanted to show him the trophy. And I just done it like 2 days prior. And I said, yeah. He's like, well, when you get home, I'll be sitting on the couch waiting for you. And I said, okay. And I had no reception up in Pennyville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I told him, I said, you know Turkey Butt, and that's Cece. Cece here is my Turkey Butt.
That's my nickname that she calls me.
And I said, you know Turkey Butt don't like to be alone, and I need you to do me one favor. And he said, what? I said, well, I'm gone these 5 days. You have to check on Cece. And he said, yeah. He said, I might just go over there tonight. You know what? I think I'm going to head there in about an hour. And I said, okay. Well, when I got up there, I started losing reception, and I had spoke to Cece on the way. I paid our electric bill. And So she sent me her part. I paid the electric bill on the way. And I said, I'm losing phone, so I don't know how long this is going to last. Well, when I got back in the car to come home after 5 days, there was nothing, no message, no.
Mm-hmm.
I checked on her. I'm over here, nothing. Thought that was weird. I got home. I talked to C. We drove out to Zach's house, and I talked to Chris in the backyard.
All right, we're gonna get into this. All hold on, Rachel. We're gonna get into all this. So let me just ask you this: what was going on in the days before? Of course, May 30th, I guess, is the accepted day of his disappearance. What was going on with Zach in those few days before the 30th? Cecilia, the way you remember it for you first, Cecilia. What do you remember about those days before then?
The days before, I remember I saw Zach a couple of times, like very quickly in passing almost. And I knew I could tell that something was off just by like his demeanor, his body language. And of course, Zach's not going to tell me anything, but I knew he would talk to Rachel, and he had confided in Rachel that he had felt suicidal and
wow.
he, losing his job, and he just had a lot on his plate, and he felt like it was just too much for him. He felt like he was having a mental crisis for sure in the last few days.
Okay, and did you see him in those, like May 27th, 28th, 29th? Did you see him or talk to him or just talk to him?
I did not, because Rachel spoke to him like what was it, like Sunday or Monday, and then Wednesday, yeah. It was earlier in the week, and then he was supposed to check on me like later in the week or the weekend. He's supposed to come by and check on me, and so I remember like knowing those Thursday through Sunday, I knew that Zach was supposed to come by anytime, and he never showed up. And I remember like we were all worried about him because we all knew that how he was feeling, and he's feeling suicidal. And of course, we're all worried. But I knew for myself, I was like, I'm not gonna be worried unless he doesn't show up, because it's not like Zach to tell me he's gonna come check on me. Especially because he knew that I was alone, and me personally, I just don't like being alone. And so for him to be like, I know you're gonna be alone, I'm gonna come see you while she's gone. Like, he wouldn't just tell me that and then not come. Like, he was not like that. He never told me or made promises to do something and then not show up. So when he never showed up that weekend, and then Rachel came home that Sunday, that's when I began to be worried, because I was like, Rachel, this isn't like him. Like, if he says he's going to come check on me, he's going to do it. And with knowing how he was feeling prior, plus him not showing up, like, that's when we all started to get really worried.
When you were talking to him, Cecilia, where was he?
He would come to my house. He would call me maybe to tell me he was on his way, but we didn't talk on the phone a lot. So yeah, he always just came by my house to talk to me. Okay.
Let's move up to the 30th. Now, my understanding is, Rachel, you actually spoke to him on this day. What kind of conversation was that?
No, sir.
You didn't?
I spoke to him 5 days before he disappeared.
That was the last time you spoke to him?
Yes, that was the last time anybody in my family had heard from him.
All right, tell the audience about that conversation. Was it in person or the phone? What was it?
I had gotten several text messages that morning before I had woke up.
Okay.
From Chris. And Chris kept on asking me, hey sis, where's Bub? If he's not here, he's with you. Give me a call. Then Cecilia wakes up about 3 and goes to work and checks in at about 5. And then I was like, she calls and she said, hey, get a hold of Zach. Chris is blowing me up. He's all worried about him. I said, I know, Chris is blowing me up. And I was like, I'll figure this out. Well, then my mom calls. And this is like 6 o'clock in the morning now. And I'm like, Mom, I've done talked to Zach. Like, no one could get out and go, I got a hold of him. And Zach had done telling me, he's like, hey, fuck everybody. I'm done. Where you at? Get your moped. I'm on my way. You know? And I said, Bub, I just got off work. I got 3 hours and I'm back, because I was working 3 jobs. And I said, I ain't got time, Bub. I said, but we can talk. And he said, nope. I'm going to watch the sun come up. I said, okay, well, let's do it together. So there was turkeys running around buying wild turkeys. And he said, you know, the sun looks really good. And I walked outside in the driveway and we watched the sun come up. We talked about it. We talked about what was going on. We talked about him coming over and seeing us. He said, no, but I'll be there Saturday. I said, well, Zach, I'm really leaving. And he had talked me into going. Then I talked myself out, and we just went back and forth. He called back again after I spoke to Chris, and he had asked me not to tell Chris where he was. And he'd asked me to make sure that Chris knew that he was at Karen's. And I was like, okay, Zach, if Chris even asks, I'll tell him. So when Chris called back, I was like, hey, bub, everything's cool. Zach just needs a moment. He's going to swing by here and check on CC. I'm headed to a retreat. And he's like, no, Rachel, I really need to know where he's at. Like, he was consistently trying to figure it out. And I was like, I don't know. He's sitting there watching the sunset, or the sunrise, and turkeys. Chris said, I know where he's at, and hung up the phone on me.
And what day was this?
This was the 25th.
The 25th, okay. And so between then and the 30th, do you know what went on with Zach?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I was gone. No phone, no way to reach out to anyone.
Okay.
I was at a sober living retreat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know that during, like, while she was away at the retreat and, you know, everyone else was home, I know my mom and me, we were obviously worried about him. And my mom had came by probably, like, the 26th, like 2 days after she had gone to her retreat, so 26th, 27th, and she was like, Cece, you know, I'm worried, like, nobody's heard from Zach in, like, you know, a day or two, like, you know, and she asked me if I thought we should be worried, and I was kind of like, well, Mom, you know Zach, you know, when he's upset, like, he likes to just, you know, he'll go to the woods, like, that's what he does. So I remember telling her, like, I know me personally, I told myself I wasn't going to be worried unless he didn't show up on Friday or Saturday like he was supposed to. Because that's what I told her. I was like, Mom, Zach told me he was going to come check on me Friday or Saturday. So he's probably off.
To help us out, Cecilia, what dates would Friday and Saturday be to help us out here?
Well, Sunday
It would have been
Sunday
3 or 4
the
days.
30th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Saturday would have been the 29th, and then Friday would have been the 28th.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, and so that's kind of, when I told my mom, you know, like, I'm not going to be worried unless he doesn't show up, because it's very out of character. He is a man of his word. Like, it's very out of character for Zach to say he's going to come see me on either of these days and then don't. And that kind of calmed her nerves, too, because, you know, we both knew if Zach said he was going to be there, he was going to be there. And so that's why when he didn't show up on Saturday, then the next day when Rachel came home and, you know, we discussed it, we were like, as a group, we decided that something was up and we needed to report him missing.
Okay.
And looking back, I think we all regret waiting as long, but it's only because he said that he would be there that Friday or Saturday.
When I got home on Sunday morning, he was supposed to see CC, stay the night, meet me, right?
Okay.
I literally, after talking to CC and hearing everything from Mom, I was like, what are y'all talking about? Ain't nobody drove to the house? So me and CC immediately did drive straight over there.
What house? What house are we talking about?
Chris's house.
Chris's house.
Chris's house. Okay.
I knocked on the door, told the kids, I was like, hey, get Dad. And Chris come out, hugged me. We talked about my trip. We went to the backyard. His wife came out. The kids were all out there. We were just talking. Well, Zach lived in the garage in the back, and Chris lived in the house. So, like, you had to stand in the backyard, you're in between both houses. And Zach's friend that lived with him, Lulu, was even out there. And she was talking about how the house was messy and stuff. And I was like, well, then go clean it. And she's like, what? I don't feel good. I said, look, girl. I said, none of us feel good every day, but we got to get up and move. I remember having a detailed conversation about how she needed to go in there and clean up the man's house. And I left. And I remember telling Cece in the car, she's going to clean the house. Let's drive home. Zach will call. Well, on my way home is whenever Chris, I guess, that night he had done the 360 move. I don't know. But he was like, I last seen him in Lynnville. I said, what? Why didn't you tell me this when I was there? And he said, well, you said he was coming. I said, yeah, Chris, you told me he was on his way. So how could it be on his way if you haven't seen him in 5 days? And he goes, I wasn't supposed to tell nobody. And I said, I'm not going to, because I kept on calling Chris.
So what was Chris? Let's just get right to it. What was Chris's story?
Chris's initial story to me was Zach would be home. And then, like I said, later that night he switched it up and he told me he made me take him somewhere, but I can't tell you. And then it went to, okay, Rachel, I took him to Lynnville and I dropped him off. I said, you dropped him off in Lynnville? And he said, right there at a sign, welcome to Lynnville. Well, I know the sign from a kid. And I said, okay, well, then he probably went to the lake house. Cece, take me to the lake house. So Cece and me drove to the lake house that night and talked to our cousins. Like I said, there's a whole road up there, and everybody on the road is related. Okay. And, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not a short road either. And that's where we spent our summers. And we went there, we talked to our cousins. It was a real late night. Our aunt was there.
Yeah, we kind of knocked on everyone. We were related to everyone on the road, so we just kind of went down the road knocking on everyone's doors.
Okay.
And so no one had heard anything. The next day, me, my mother, and my cousin, and my cousin's wife drove out there again. And this day, I'm walking up and down the street, the interstate right there, because I'm getting Zach's ping off his phone. I had pinged his phone. And I know I'm close to it, but I can't find it. And my cousin walks over, and right underneath the leaf of a plant by that welcome sign, we find Zach's phone upside down.
Wow.
About 4 foot. No. Sorry. But then my sister Tubbs and Cece showed up, and they found Zach's lighter and cigarettes about maybe 5 feet from that.
So you got the phone, and you got these phone and cigarettes and lighter all kind of close to each other, just not far from the road?
Yeah.
Okay.
The phone, it literally could have been thrown. The phone. You got it, that's how close it was to the road.
Okay.
The phone was the farthest thing back. The creek bed was right there on the edge.
Okay. Let me ask you this: how specific was Chris about? He didn't tell you right away you're over there, and he's just like, well, Zach's gonna come back, and then later he does a 180 and says, well, wait a minute, I wasn't supposed to say anything. But when he told you that story, how specific was he?
At that point, he just said that Zach had asked him to drive up there and gave him his wallet and everything, and then told him to leave. But then later on, it turned into Zach made me get on the phone, drive around. I was almost out of gas. I had to go to the gas station, and then my wife.
All right, I got it. I just once again, we're going to take this very slow.
Wow.
We're going to take this very slow. So first he says it's a real simple story, and that's when both of you went down there and started knocking on all the doors.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
right? And then you eventually, pinging his phone, you found his phone and stuff in that general area. In both of your opinions, being that I've not been there, would you say that Chris was then telling the truth, that he let Zach off at a particular spot, and that's where the phone and the cigarette and the lighters were found?
Yes and no.
Yeah, he was definitely telling us the general area, where he dropped him off at, but he was kind of his story was changing, and
all right, we'll get to his story changing. I just want to know, he gave you a spot, you went down there and eventually found the phone and everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you get that, and what do you two do after you find the phone and those items that that were Zach's. Did you call the police? What did you do next?
I immediately called the police, but we hadn't found we had talked to the police before the phone was found.
Okay.
We had spoke to the police before I found the phone. I spent days up there just looking. I had also ran into town hall and got the town hall to help me that day. They were having a town hall meeting. Me and my cousin went up there, explained everything to them. We had rescue people there's a state park there. Mm-hmm. I had talked to the grounds people. The grounds people had been looking. Cecilia and Shauna were scouting. The police were calling us back. Mm-hmm. And then the phone was discovered. And then and that was a different day. And then we got a camp shelter up there. And the town provided us water and a camp shelter. We had tried to talk to Chris multiple times throughout this. And he wouldn't talk to us. These were like the first 3 days back. And then me and CC went there at night to talk to him and to try to recover a shirt. Because the police had said that they were going to get a dog. And there was rain due for the next 2 days. And I had went down there and we knocked on the door and we had been up there in the woods. So we had ticks on us, a baby with us, and my other sister, Shauna. The kids come on the porch, and they were talking to us. There was 2 babies from the house and our baby, so they were playing. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, police show up, and Chris and his wife, and they wanted.
This is the part where I told you Chris told them that we tried to break in.
Okay, and so we'll get to that. So once again, we're trying to take Rachel. I'm trying to take this very slow. All right, we're gonna get to all this. So what did Chris say about the phone and the lighter and stuff being found? When you told him you found that stuff, did he have any reaction to it?
I don't even think I ever got to tell him.
Yeah, he kind of started ignoring us.
I never got to talk to him after he told me he dropped him off. Okay. I've never spoke to Chris since that day.
Okay, what about you, Cecilia?
Same thing here. Like, he kind of told Rachel his little last bit of that story and then blocked all of our numbers, quit responding, yeah.
Okay, so he tells you this story about finally telling you, well, he got out of the car at this particular spot, and that's when you go down there, eventually find the phone and all that stuff there, and really it was after that you had no communication with Chris again.
Yeah.
Okay.
He started ignoring us after that.
All right, so regarding the searches, how many people were involved, any helicopters, dogs, regarding searches in that area? What can you say about that?
I can say, like Rachel said, the town was really nice. They gave us a shelter, provided us food and water. And at first they told us, to recruit people to come to the search, but then it actually turned into the woods that they were searching. It's a state park, and it's super dense, and there's cliffs and all kinds of stuff, and then it kind of turned into 2 reasons why they didn't want us in the woods. One was because such a dense forest, anyone who's not familiar with it could easily get lost and turned around. And the second one was because at that point he had already been missing for so long, and it was, the hot heat in summer, that they had, respectfully said, at this point we feel like we are looking for a body and not a living person. Yeah. So they said they didn't want us in the woods just in case we were to come across that. That's not something they wanted us to see.
Because Chris had told the police at this time that Zach may or may not have had a handful of Seroquel.
Yeah, are those sleeping pills?
Sleeping pills.
Okay.
And so at that point, the police were taking in the fact that
he might have killed
himself, and they didn't want children or people seeing it.
Yeah. Okay. So at first we were recruiting people from the community, but then they were
and they had drones.
Yeah, and they did have drones. And they did. It was the local firefighters and police, I think.
Evansville and Warrick County came together and
they combed the woods, and they were flying drones, and I think they had people on boats in the lake, but yeah.
Okay, so we got these searches going on, and for both of you, how long would you say they spent out there searching before it was well, we give up? I know you too. I know your family hasn't given up, but for authorities, how long would you say? How many days out there before it was like, well, we don't know what to do?
I'd say like 2 days.
It was 2 days. It was most of the morning of the second day, and then the first day, I think they were out there 12 hours.
Yeah, like they were out there like all day one day, and then the next day they were out there like 12 hours.
And I do believe that there was another aerial flight before and after the search of the dogs.
Okay.
But
yeah, they brought dogs.
But here's the thing with the dog. The dog had no scent to go on. It was, they were going to use a scent dog and a cadaver dog. Well, they couldn't use the scent dog because all that we could recover from Chris was a wallet that Zach had given Chris and that Chris had in his pocket up until this day. You know?
Chris's scent.
So it wasn't even my brother's scent no more. It was already Zach, or Chris's. And then
all right, so no clothes were at Chris's that they could use, that you could use, or what?
He didn't give them to us.
Yeah, that's when we said we went to his house.
All right, so I just want to keep this simple. So at that point, or no point since, Chris would give up any of Zach's items that were at his house.
No, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we went to his house. And
Yeah,
we'll get into the break-in story here in a bit. But I just want to keep this very clear, yes and no question. So you needed something to help in the search, and in your opinion, you were there. He would not give up like a jeans, a shirt, socks, nothing.
No, nothing.
Okay, let's move on to this. Being that the phone was found, any help? Would it work? Was it damaged? Was the battery out of it? What can you say about the phone?
It was working. It was on.
Perfectly working. It was on 12%, and it was face down.
Okay. Did you guys look through it, see who he last called and text? Do we have any information in that area?
The police do.
Yeah, they gave the phone to the police like right after they found it.
All right, so you two didn't get to look at it, like to peruse it?
I was not there when the phone was found,
okay.
but Rachel was.
Okay, so you unfortunately didn't get to look at anything, Rachel? Like
no,
scroll through it and see if there was any fact or text or anything?
No, it went straight to the police. I wasn't the one that picked it up. I can't remember if it was Josh. I wasn't the one that recovered the phone. The phone went straight to an officer.
Okay.
That's what I was saying earlier.
I don't know if it was Chris or not. If it was Josh.
No, it wasn't. There was like a woman that found the phone and called the police.
Maybe yes.
That's what I was telling you earlier when you were saying you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't remember who found the phone. I just remember the phone went straight to the police officer.
Okay.
But she was able to she was able to use the Find My Phone to find Zach's phone.
Yeah.
But also while she was doing that, someone found the phone because it was pinging.
We were pinging it.
Because they were pinging it, there was someone who was walking or doing gardening something, but she heard the phone pinging, and that's when she found the phone.
Wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't Rachel who found the phone, but it was Rachel who was pinging it, and then someone else found it.
Okay.
And then it went straight to the police.
All
and
right.
the police did say that, obviously we didn't get to go through it, but the police did say that they did find some concerning messages on the phone. They didn't say between who, but they did tell us that there was some concerning things on the phone.
Wow.
Because we had to meet with them in 2 conference rooms.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so they have the phone. It was found. They got to take a look at it. It wasn't damaged. They could use it. And there were concerning messages on it, but we don't know what those messages said. Moving on to this, kind of already touched upon this, but getting back to Chris, I think, Cecilia, you said, at least your understanding, you only got to speak to him once before all the searching got started, but you left me with the impression that as time has gone on, there's been more and more to the story. Is that correct?
Yes, he, to me specifically, and I know to Rachel, he has not reached out to either of us to talk to either of us.
Okay.
But he has, as time has gone on, and I don't think it's been often. I think it was more so after the search kind of died down. I think Chris started telling a different story to her mom. But as of recently, he has not reached out to her even.
Okay.
He really only reached out to...
How's the story? What I would say, my impression from talking to you before, Cecilia, is that the story has become a little more complex. He's like elaborated a little bit more. Is that how
Yes.
you would say?
Yes.
Okay. Something that really sticks out to me is my impression from my notes is that at the beginning, of course, he didn't tell you about any of this, and then he did a 180 and said, "Oh yeah, dropped him off or whatever," and then eventually he brought up something about pills. What can you say about that?
Yeah, at first he said that he was driving and Zach said, "Stop here," and then got out and just left his stuff with Chris. And then the story turned into he threw his stuff, and that he had like dumped out his like bag, I guess, and was kind of like taking what he wanted. And then during dumping his bag out, he had like taken a bunch of pills with him. But that did not come out until like after the searches. That's when he decided to say that.
Okay.
Because at first it was that Zach left everything with Chris, and now Zach took his phone and pills and. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, he said one time that Zach
Please.
talked to him, and then another time he said Zach got in the car quietly and pointed all the way to where he wanted to go, and then stopped the car. And then the third time, I heard this one on the podcast, that Zach's wife was on the phone talking to Zach, and then another time Chris said that he had turned his phone off and took the phone, and no one could get a hold of him. Because I remember her saying that she couldn't even get a hold of Chris the whole time, and that's why she was worried.
Yeah.
So it's like switched.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to stick on the pills. He said that before Zach got out of the car, once again, this is from my notes from when Cecilia and your mother and I spoke before, that allegedly before he got out, Zach actually dumped the pills out of the bottle, left the bottle, took the pills with him when he got out of the car.
Yes, that is one of the stories that he's told.
Okay. And has anybody ever seen this bottle?
No.
Empty bottle. Has he ever presented this bottle to anybody?
No.
Okay. In your opinion, those pills, could they be dangerous?
Yes, you can overdose on the sleeping pills.
Okay.
They are a tranquilizer. They put you to sleep, but they're also a depression pill.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yes, you can overdose on them.
All right, but just to keep in mind for everybody that's listening, this is the story that Chris has told, but he's never presented the empty bottle as evidence.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've also, even the police had said that Chris never really told them one solid story. He's always had multiple.
Okay. All right, moving on. I just want to go back to what Chris's wife said. Once again, you said that she said this. How do you know that Chris's wife, the story about how their phones were shut off or something, how do you two know about this?
There was another man who did a podcast. His name is Matt Dyke. He does the River City podcast here in Evansville. And after he did a podcast with me, he then, I guess, reached out to Chris for Chris's side of the story. And when Chris did the podcast, it was pretty much just, I don't know. He said a lot of stuff on that podcast that no one else knew because he has not talked to us since our brother went missing.
Okay.
So we don't know whether to believe that. We also know that some of the stuff he said, A, is not true, or B, he didn't tell the police. If it is true, he didn't tell the police that. Okay. So that's how we know about the
What exactly was the story that Chris and Zach's phones were both shut off? That is what Chris's wife said.
He said that whenever Zach was like, or whenever Zach asked Chris to, when they went on their drive or whatever, I guess during the drive, somewhere between Evansville and Lynnville, supposedly, as what Chris and his wife said, that I guess Chris was on the phone with his wife, and that Zach had taken it because I guess Chris and his wife can see each other's locations. Yeah. But somehow on the drive, Zachary had gotten Chris's phone and his own phone and turned their locations off. And so that is why Chris's wife called him, supposedly. It's because she could see that their locations were turned off. But that is not any information. He didn't tell any of us that. when this was first going on, he didn't tell the police that. So this is kind of, he said this in this podcast a couple months ago, and now that's another new story.
All right, so I guess what we're saying here is that it's possible for a portion of this drive after Chris and Zach left Chris's house for this drive that the GPS was not tracking them for a while.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and Chris is saying he's blaming it on Zach.
Yes.
Okay. Do we know anything about when Chris finally made it back to his own house without Zach? Do we know what time he got back or anything like that?
No. Yeah, we don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Only thing that we know after that was whenever I showed up and saw Chris after my trip.
Yeah, because Chris,
it was 5 days. I was at a retreat.
Yeah.
They hadn't checked up, so it's a 5-day gap right there.
Yeah, and we hadn't checked up because we were expecting to see Zach on Saturday.
Right.
And so, like, during that time period, because Chris went from, before Rachel left, he was, calling everyone about Zach, but then Rachel goes to her retreat, and then it's silence. We don't hear anything from Zach. We don't hear anything from Chris.
Okay. But so I guess then I should ask, just so we make sure we cover all the bases. This is all being accepted as like the 30th, but did anybody who you trust, it doesn't sound like you trust Chris or his wife. I'm not telling anybody in the audience they shouldn't trust them, but it doesn't sound like you two do. Did anybody you trust speak to Zach on the 28th or the 29th or something?
No.
I was the last phone call outside of Chris and Chris's wife that called Zach's phone.
Yeah, he didn't call anyone else, no.
All right. Did anybody, once again, besides Chris and his wife, anybody see Zach the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th?
No.
Okay. So, to get right to the point then, is it possible then that Zach did not disappear on the 30th? He could have disappeared on the 26th.
That's what I believe.
Yeah, that's what we've always believed, that he disappeared around the 26th, but because we didn't report him missing until the 30th, that's the date that the police and everyone used.
All right. But Chris is portraying it as it was May 30th.
Yes.
Okay. But you
or at
two...
least he didn't tell us anything until we reported him missing.
Right.
Because, like I said, that was the last time anyone talked to him, and then we reported him missing, and we talked to him a little bit. We don't get much information, and then after that, it's radio silence.
All right, but just to make sure, he has represented that Zach got out of Chris. Chris is representing that Zach got out of his car on May 30th, but there's no reason to believe it couldn't have been earlier than that, the 29th, the 28th, the 27th, the 26th.
No, I don't think so. Chris has never, because we reported him missing on the 30th, so we know that if he
gone 5 days.
Yeah, we know that it could have been any time between that 5 days, is what we know. And Chris has never given us a specific date.
So Chris has never even given you a specific date.
Yeah, we don't know a date.
Yeah, but we just know it's sometime between the 26th, and obviously we reported him on the 30th, but it would have been before that. So anytime between the 26th and the 28th.
All right, so going back to when he changed that story on the same day, when you said that he did a 180 on his story, what day do you think he was representing when he said that?
It would have had to been the first or the second.
No, I'm not telling you when he said that. He's saying that, I'm asking you, when he told you that, what date do you think that he meant?
Like when he told you the story, what day do you think he was referring to?
He didn't say. Even when I would ask, I was like, so what, did you guys go right after you picked him up or anything? And he's like, well, when I got off the phone with you, I told you I knew where he was. So I was like, okay. He's like, I picked him up. Then he told me 3 different stories.
Yeah, so he never
gave
always
me a date.
It's very cloudy. All right, so very, very cloudy in your opinion on this topic.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move. All right, so we have to remember all that. So we just can't think it's certainly not the 25th because that's the day, Rachel, you spoke to him, but sometime before the 30th.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we've only used the 30th because that's the date that we reported missing. That's what police put. So.
Okay. Moving on to this, now we get to the break-in story. That you, of course, you were not breaking into Chris's house, but please explain your side of it.
Okay. So basically, we were at the search and rescue. We were at the state park in Lynnville that day, and the police had told us that, you know, with the cadaver dogs and stuff, that if we could find anything like a shirt or something with accents on it, that would be beneficial.
Okay.
The police tell us at the search and rescue party that, you know, hey, if you guys can get like clothes or something, you know, we appreciate it. And at this point, Chris hasn't like fully blocked us out. He is still kind of giving us bits and pieces. So we have no reason to think that Chris would do any of what he does next, right? So me, Rachel, and our little sister, Vershana, we leave from Lynnville, and we say, okay, on our way home, we're going to go and stop at Chris's house and see if we can't get a shirt or something from him. And we get there, and Chris and his wife are not home, so we wait on the porch with Chris's daughter and her kids, and my little sister has a kid, so their kids are playing together, and we're all just sitting on the porch waiting for Chris to get home. And when Chris pulls around the corner, he is accompanied by 2 police cars, and we're all kind of confused because we're like, you know, why are the cops here? And then Chris gets out. He starts kind of like pointing and shouting at us. And again, we don't know why he's acting like this because we just talked to him on the phone with his daughter, and he was like, yeah, I'm headed home soon.
Okay.
And so he gets there, and then the police quickly like separate. You know, they put me, Rachel, and our sister Vershana on one side of the road, and they take Chris and his wife to the other side of the road, and they're talking to us. And the police essentially tell us that Chris told them that we were trying to break into the house. But they say, you know, they pulled up and we're all just sitting on the porch. Like, clearly, we're not trying to break in. We came in peace, you know. But that is kind of crazy. You know, why would Chris tell the police we were trying to break into his home? And then essentially the police said that because Zachary lived with Chris and his belongings were at Chris's, that Chris legally did not have to give us anything that belongs to our brother. So to this day, we have not received any of my brother's belongings. He never gave us any clothes to use for the search for the dogs. And we don't know if he even still has our brother's things or not. But yeah, that's how that goes. And he of course did ban us from his house. We can no longer return to his house. But the police did know that was obviously a lie, and they even said that they found it suspicious that he would say that 3 women were breaking in when we were not.
Do you think, certainly there could not, I mean, you said that Chris's kids were there, and you guys were just talking.
Yeah, we were all just sitting on the porch talking, and their kids were playing in the yard. Like, the police pulled up and immediately knew that story was a lie.
Where was Chris's wife?
Chris's wife was with Chris on, like, the other side of the road with him.
So she wasn't there when you showed up. It was just his kids.
Yeah, it was just his kids.
And
yeah.
how old are they?
Told us,
Probably have children.
Yeah, they're like in their early 20s, I'd say.
Okay, so they're adults.
Yeah.
And you were getting along with them, and then so all of a sudden, Chris pulls up with a couple cop cars.
Yes.
We were actually talking about a job.
Yeah,
because the girl's son was like needing a job, so like I was telling him about a job.
Yeah, we were just talking, and the kids didn't make it seem like, you know, like we knocked on the door, they answered, and they were like, oh, he's not here, but we'll call him for you. And we even heard them on the phone. We heard Chris say, yeah, like, hang tight, we'll be there soon. So yeah, like we were all just waiting on the porch for Chris.
Huh. And you never got to speak to Chris during this, like ask him, why did you say that we were trying to break? You never got to any chance to do that.
I'm not going to lie to you.
I certainly do not want you to lie to me. That's true.
Yes. No, not going to lie. We were very angry because, first of all, you just tried to tell the police we were breaking into your house.
Right.
I was on parole.
My sister was on parole. Like, we're obviously upset because why would you do that?
Right.
But, you know, also the police were like, you know, you're not in any trouble. You know, we can tell you're not breaking in. But it's frustrating to know that he would do that to us because all we wanted was stuff for the dogs to have my brother sent.
All right, but to be clear, though, you're standing there. Chris shows up. you don't get to like even yell to them. Why did you tell them that? Anything like that?
I did.
Oh, we yelled at him for sure,
okay.
but the police separated us, so we could no longer scream at each other.
All right.
I definitely was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand why my brother, my friend, and a person I grew up with was literally standing behind a 4-foot-something wife and allowing her to shame us and say the things that she was saying. My heart was breaking at that point. And I even told the cop.
And like I said, they pulled up, he got out of his car, like, pointing and shouting at us. So off the bat, we're kind of yelling at each other, but we didn't even get to exchange anything because off the bat, Chris is yelling at us, pointing, making accusations, and then the police quickly separate us. So we never got to talk one-on-one because we were separated. And, of course, we were all angry, so that did not help the fact.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to remind everybody, up until this happened, Chris was like one of the family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what happened that we were like, we were all so shocked because we were like, what is going on? And that's kind of when we started to have our own ideas.
Chris's own brother talks to me still. I still am in contact with Chris's brother. And anytime I say anything like, hey, how's the kids going? He'd be like, fine. He's like, how's your kids? I'm like, good. I'm like, it's been a year my brother's been gone. And he'd be like, I know, that's just, it's crazy. Chris, don't talk about it. Like, if there's a dead subject.
Yeah.
And his brother and him are close, but I was close to his brother.
Mm-hmm. So this brother of Chris's has never given you any explanation about why Chris has acted like this?
No.
Okay. All right, and you said, though, that Chris, though, did not shy away from being interviewed for this other podcast or whatever, and was asked questions about all this. Did he talk about you being over there and trying to get Zach's stuff? Did that come up in that conversation in this other podcast or not?
I honestly can't remember, and again, I'm going to be honest. Very early on in Chris's interview, he starts just
down my mom.
He starts talking badly about our mom, and he starts just saying horrible things. So, if I'm being honest with you, I didn't even watch or listen to the whole thing through because it just made me so angry. And I know at some point I did sit down and like try to listen to the rest of it, and I can't say off the top of my head if he brings it up. And I know Rachel didn't finish it either.
I started it, and then I finished it later on, like she said. It was about a week later, and I can't remember anything because I toned most of it out. Yeah. If it wasn't related to something I thought I could tell the detective, I left it out of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, he was basically just him talking badly the whole time.
All right, so once again, being Rachel, that you listened to most of it, did any of these things come up? Him regarding, once again, him calling the cops for the cops to be with him. Did that even come up during that other interview? The way you remember. I'm going to find, of course,
I remember was him saying that the cops had taken his phone at one point and had talked to him on several occasions. And then he kind of was like, if the cops wanted them to know, they would know. And I never understood what that meant. So.
All right, all I'm asking is, the situation where you're there and he shows up with two cops, did that even come up?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it might have. I mean, I guess
All
I
right.
could listen to it again.
All right.
He talked about us breaking in, but he had. Right. That was it. He talks about that break-in, but there was no break-in. And then he also talks about the dog, because my brother had left behind a pit that was like his kid. And he talked about how he had to put the dog down, but we had baked him up until... I even tried to take the dog to the search so Cutter could send him out, find him.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get the dog. And I know he brought that up.
Yeah, that's true. We did try to get my brother's dog back.
Yeah.
And then in his podcast, he says that he had to put the dog down, even though we tried multiple times to get the dog back.
All right, I'm going to have to listen. Listeners should know I've not listened to this yet. So I'm going to have to listen to this before this episode has come out, and probably I will offer my own insights in it after this interview plays.
I can send you the links.
Excuse me?
I said I can send you the links to the
podcast. Please. And so we're doing this interview on June 27th of 2024. I'm anticipating that this comes out on July 5th. So sometimes between now and when this episode comes out, I'm going to have to listen to this, and then I will give my impressions of it in the summation for this episode that comes out on July 5th. All right? Because I'm gonna have to, no matter what he says and what he says about your mother and everything, I'm going to have to listen to it. All right.
Yes, no, I know, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to them, because I think they're like 40 minutes each.
Wow. Okay. Let's move on to this. Now, I should bring up something that Zach's disappearance is not on the federal database NamUs. Is there any reason for that?
Zach?
I mean, he has a silver alert.
No, he's in the Indiana database of missing.
Okay, but he's not on NamUs, which is the federal database.
No.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, he's not. I've checked. You gotta work on getting him on there.
I know I'm planning a candlelight vigil with Cece, and we're gonna try to get some more things out. I know I'm going to reach out to the news people again.
I didn't realize that he wasn't on the federal.
I don't know if he is or isn't.
I know he's on the Indiana one,
but I know I'm going to reach out to the man that did the original news feed, and my neighbors have been talking to me about what I should do more. But if he's not on there, he will be on there.
Okay. Has anybody taken your? Once again, we hope that Zach is found alive soon. But has anybody taken your DNA yet?
No. My DNA's on file.
Well, I'm just, for purposes, though, of, for if remains are found in the area, that they can be tested against them.
Oh, no.
No.
That has not happened.
All right, you got to get that done.
Do you know how to go about this?
Well, you can contact NamUs. You could do that, and then someday... Usually, if the police department is up on its stuff, they'll usually do it for you. They get a missing persons report, and if it is not solved within a month or something, usually the good departments will automatically file it into the federal database, and what that automatically triggers is that one day somebody will just show up at your job or at your home, and they'll swab your mouth and take your DNA, and it'll go into the database, and in case... unidentified remains are found anywhere, not just in Indiana, but anywhere, and they generally fit the description of Zach, they will test your DNA against the unidentified remains.
I appreciate for that, because I'm definitely doing it.
All right, so you can look up NamUs on just Google it or whatever, or you can talk to the police department if you have a decent relationship with them, and you have to get on them. Now. To get that all started, because what we're trying to avoid is a situation. Once again, I hope that Zach is still alive, but if he is deceased, it is at least possible. I don't know how probable it is, but it's at least conceivable that remains might have been found somewhere. Maybe not even in Indiana. Maybe he went somewhere else, and the remains could be somewhere, but they'd never be able to go back to you because they don't have your DNA in the database, and that's something you want to avoid. And that's how this does happen. So that's something that that's like priority number one now.
Yeah, that is definitely something we have not even thought of. We did not even know that was a thing.
Yeah. And I will, when we're done, I guess you're going to send me a link to that podcast. And we have another disappearance you told me about that I know you're going to send me some information on. In return, I will send you information on NamUs so you can get that started. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's move to the conclusion here. Cecilia, I'll start with you. How tough has the last year been?
The last year has been extremely tough. It's almost been, at first, I feel like I was just in disbelief. Like yes, everything happened. Yes, there was a search party, but it was almost like I just didn't feel like any of it was really real until things started happening. When Christmas came around, that's when it really kind of hit me that he was not going to be here for Christmas.
Yeah.
Or when I was Christmas shopping and I was like, Zach's not here, like, I don't know what he wants for Christmas this year. Like, I really think there was, like, a period of time where I was just, like, didn't want to think about it and almost didn't believe it. And then, like, the holidays and birthdays. And then it's, like, it's so crazy because there's family traditions and you almost don't even realize those things until they're happening and he's just not there to experience it. So I would say, and I would say definitely the past, like, 6 months have been the hardest, just because that's been when all the holidays and birthdays are.
Yeah.
So I think the longer it goes, that's almost like the worse that it gets, because at first it was like, he could come back tomorrow, he could come back, you know.
Yeah.
But now it's been a year. It's been cold out. It's been extremely hot out. We've had horrible storms. So now it's like, if he's out there and all this has happened, like, it's just like the longer it goes, the worse that it gets.
Right.
So yes, it's been difficult, especially lately.
What about you, Rachel?
I'm gonna try and catch my breath after that. I want to say it's been the worst, but I feel like I lost my sister again. I feel like I'm waiting for him to open the door. I want to tell him all my success. I'm clean. I'm sober. I want to show him that I've got my kids, that I have my apartment by myself. I made it off parole. I have no friend to share this with. He's gone. I haven't watched a decent movie. I feel like my best friend's gone. I feel like the person that I go to for all my advice and to keep me calm is never walking through my door again. And that really hurts because he's pulled me up whenever I lost my husband. He's been there when I lost my kids. He's been there through all my addiction. He's been there through the pain. And it's like, where is he at?
Yeah.
Who do I tell? Me and Cecilia have gotten so, we've been close, but we have gotten so close in this last year.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with the fact that he is gone. And my missing person's gone. Like, he's gone. I don't have him. So she's definitely became that phone call and my little buddy. Like,
it's just hard because there's, like, so many things that you don't think about when he first goes missing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, as time goes on and you start to experience things, it's, like, hard because we don't know where he's at. We can't just call him and tell him about our day. Like,
my kids, my son is he wants to build everything, and he wants to go fishing, and he's 11, and he's here this summer with me, and I keep telling him every day, I feel like I say it, if your Uncle Zach was here, he could show you how to whittle. When your Uncle Zach comes home, he's going to love that knife collection. When your Uncle Zach gets here, I feel like I'm always saying something about Zach, because he reminds me so much of him.
Yeah. Do you two...
And I'm scared to death that my mom's going to go, because my mom's in bad health.
Yeah.
And I don't want my mom to go and my brother never be home. I don't want my father, the man that raised him, to go and my brother not be here.
Yeah, like, it's a big fear, you know, like, not knowing.
They buried a daughter already, and John is Zach's dad, but that was also another dad to us. And we buried him, and it's like, I just want my brother to either say, hey, hi, or just, I need to know something.
Yeah, I think not knowing is the worst part, like...
Yeah,
it's definitely because it's hard to find closure or to, like, have hope when you genuinely do not know.
Right. Do you two have a Facebook page or something set up for Zach's disappearance? If so, why don't you tell the listeners about it right now?
Yes, it's called Help Find Zach. Yep.
My sister Kelly.
Yes, our sister Kelly created it. Neither of us did. But it is on Facebook. Anytime there's, like, any updates or Evansville Watch, like, his flyers are posted in there. There haven't been a lot of updates So most of what is on that page is just his flyers and us asking to please share about it.
People talking.
Yeah, people can comment on there sometimes.
My sister checks it often.
Yeah, sometimes people just comment on there to talk about like a memory or something of Zach. So.
Yeah. Why don't you say the name of it again?
It is Help Find Zach, and it's ZAC.
Okay. Any final words before we complete this interview, Rachel and Cecilia?
Yes, I want to say that I really miss my brother, and I really hope and pray that he is alive out there. And if for some reason he hears this, I want him to know that I love him so much, and it doesn't matter what has happened or what could possibly be going on, but we want him to come home. And if anyone sees him or has any updates or anything that they think might be helpful to his case, they can call the Warrick County Sheriff's Department in Indiana, because that is who is handling this investigation.
Okay.
Yes, and then I also have that video or recording that my mom wanted us to put on.
Yeah, why don't you play that? Yes, listeners, Rachel and Cecilia told me about this before we started. Why don't you play that recording right now?
Yes, my mom said she was too upset.
Yeah.
She didn't think she could make it through an interview, so This is what she wanted to say.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jeannie Carey, Zachary's mom. The only thing I've got to say is I'm worried about my son, and I need to know where my son is. And if he would contact me, if he would happen to hear this. I love you, Zach. All I have to say to Zach is we've been through so much. There's nothing we can't get through. Come home. We'll figure it out. And I love you.
Cecilia and Rachel, I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And that was my June 27th, 2024 interview with two of Zac Carey's sisters, Rachel and Cecilia. I thank them for joining me and all of you on this episode. I created a map video to show where people found Zach's phone and cigarettes. I also look at the surrounding area. Please find the video on Unfound's YouTube channel. Right about now, you may be thinking, did Rachel and Cecilia say Chris did his own interview somewhere? Yes, they did. And I can tell you where to find it. If you go to the River City Mystery channel on YouTube, you can hear Chris give his own point of view of what happened last year, including his description of when Zach walked off. The video runs for about 40 minutes. I've spoken to the host, whose name is Matt, and I think he did a great job of listening and allowing Chris to say what he wanted to say. Overall, you should not be surprised that Chris has an entirely different version of events than Cecilia and Rachel do. In fact, the only thing that I think they agree upon is that everything between them was fine until the day when Chris claimed that the Carey family was trying to break into his house. I will give my own insight into Chris's interview when I write the Patreon blog this weekend. Patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. But there are a couple of assignments that I give you as you listen to Chris talk about the disappearance of a guy he calls his longtime pal. First, note the tone of Chris's voice as he recounts watching Zach leave his ID, social security card, and cash in Chris's vehicle and just walk off into the woods. Second, I would like you to keep a record of the number of times Chris uses the following words in the interview. The words are regret, apology, apologize, sorry, choice, different, sad. Okay, as for the interview you just heard with Rachel and Cecilia. The overall tone of the interview is one I've heard before. in disappearances such as Shanna Boydo's, Noah Davis, Alicia Markovich, and some others. What do all of these have in common? Well, like Zach's disappearance, in each there were people around the missing person who seemingly just allowed that missing person to just walk off. No questions, no comments, no attempts to stop them. Nothing. Even though the circumstances were ones in which the person probably should not have been allowed to leave so easily, if the person left at all. Moreover, these witnesses in these disappearances continue to show no remorse for their actions at the time. And from that comes the emotion incredulity. That's what I hear in these types of interviews, including the one with Rachel and Cecilia. Incredulity, Ed? That's a big word. What does it mean? Well, simply, it means disbelief. Or more complexly, disbelief because you expected someone to make a better choice. Or in layman's terms, incredulity starts with the sentence, "How could you do that?" What I'm saying is there are no facts to support the idea of Chris having done anything to Zach. Zero. Although that could have happened because there are no facts to rule it out. However, the reason Rachel and Cecilia and the rest of the family are suspicious of Chris is because they really can't believe Chris sat there and watched Zach leave his ID, social security card, and cash behind. And Chris then watched as Zach walked off into the woods without Chris even calling 911 because Zach was obviously having some kind of mental health issue. How could Chris do that? In fact, they are so stunned by Chris's story that Zach's family can't believe it happened that way. Thus, they look for some other story, and that is what leads them to foul play, because they thought very highly of Chris until all this happened. And yes, in disappearances, this is how crazy it gets. When the facts are neutral, sometimes it's easier to believe a partner killed another than to believe that partner watched the other walk off. It's like we all get murder, but that walk-off thing, wow, that's hard to understand. Zach's family feels like Chris should have been looking out for Zach's mental and physical well-being better than he did. You know, because that's what best friends do. Like I said before, if you'd like to hear and read more of my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of Zac Carey, go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, sign up, and partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.